Welcome to Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw. That would be the WWE Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And we've got one of the best, funniest, and most entertaining guys we've ever run across in the history of WWE. He was a major force in the creative writing team, but more importantly, he had the greatest character in the history of professional wrestling, Big Dick Johnson. Big Dick, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here and to chat with you two guys. I'm sure we've got some great stories to talk about and let people in on.
So like JBL said, we're so happy to have you. You know, we want to get everybody on here and you know, all walks of WWE, and you were so instrumental in a lot of great angles and skits that happened with WWE. So we're going to get your side of the story, probably some of the most entertaining stories that went on during that time, man. But welcome to the show, man. We're thrilled to have you.
Well, I'm super excited to be here. Let's do it.
Chris DeJoseph, I should have said full name is the real name.
Okay.
But so do you ever like introduce yourself? Because like a lot of times the boys always introduce themselves by their working name, but for good reason. You know, a lot of times we didn't want to make the mistake of using somebody's shoot name on television, so we always called each other by their working name. Did you ever just introduce yourself and stick your hand out and say, "Hey, how you doing, Big Dick"?
No, I never did, not once. But people always, everybody called me DJ anyway, so I guess I had that part. I just left the B off of it.
We always heard you went up to Mae Young, said, "Hey, I'm Big Dick Johnson." She said, "I want to meet you. Would you come to my room tonight?"
Where'd you hear that story? I didn't think anybody knew about that.
DJ, what you're a writer, and you came to WWE, and as you know, and you found out there, the writing staff and the talent and the office. I mean, they very seldom, get to know each other and to find out what each other's all about. But you just had that personality where you crossed that line and everything. Your personality. I mean, what attracted you to wrestling, and what kind of got you into the WWE? Because it's so unique, and a lot of people out there want to know. I got talent writing. How do I get into that stuff? How do you tell them your story?
Yeah, for me, it was basically, I love wrestling my whole life. I guess the theater of it and the excitement and the action, I just fell in love with it. And I think it was kind of like passed down throughout my family. Like, I even remember my great grandma watching wrestling at home, and it's just like something that.
Louis, or where'd you grow up? Where'd you originally start?
Well, I was born in Connecticut, actually. So the WWE was right in my backyard. But then I moved to Las Vegas as a kid, and I ended up basically watching more WCW just because they were there all the time. So go to shows and stuff like that, and I kind of fell in love with it. Then I kind of reached a point in my life, like after college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And, my dad's like,
me and Jerry still don't. We have no idea.
My dad's like, well, you better figure out something soon, because I'm not giving you another dime. And, and I was like, you know what? I want to work for the WWE. And, so I moved back to Connecticut, and I was just, funny, I worked at a liquor store to try to make money so I could figure out a way to get into the WWE. I would bring my resume by there, here and there. And eventually my uncle had a friend who was a used car salesman who sold a car to one of the lawyers at WWE, and ended up getting my resume. And then I got an internship in the international department for Tommy Carlucci. I had interviewed with all these people, but only Tommy was really the only one who got it, because when you went there, they're like, you can't say you're a fan. You can't say you're a fan. But I just told Tommy, I was like, yeah, I'm a big fan, and he loved that. And then
you got hooked with Tommy Carlucci, one of the nicest guys in the WWE, WWF, long-time employee, as his wife, and that everybody. I mean, you hooked up with the right guy.
And his son, Jerry, and his son named Tommy also has been working there for quite some time. A budding drummer in a band.
Hell of a drummer.
Yeah, he is. He's a really good drummer. But Tommy Carlucci, one of the nicest guys in in our business history. I mean, just a wonderful guy, and really knows his stuff. A good competent guy too.
So he was up and telling you, don't tell everybody you've been a fan all your life, right?
That's what everybody had told me going into the interviews, but Tommy and I just started talking about wrestling, and he knew I was a fan, and I think he liked that part of it. And I was like, he ended up hiring me, and I was an intern for him for like 8 months, but I was like getting paid hardly anything. And I was like, working with Hugo and Carlos on Spanish SmackDown. I didn't speak a word of Spanish, but I had to stay up until like 4 o'clock in the morning and record SmackDown.
Wait a minute. What were you doing on Spanish SmackDown?
Because I think it was because I was the only one willing to stay at work until like 4 o'clock in the morning and just watch wrestling over and over and over and over again. Because like when you're an intern there, especially in the international department, you have to watch every version of like each show. So in all the different languages. So I was one person, I didn't really mind. I was like, oh, I get to watch Raw like 5 times. Like, this is great. Like, I'm getting paid for this. This is amazing.
So you watched, how did you know what they were talking about? Did you watch did you have translation there for it? Is that how you did it?
No, I didn't know what they were talking about at all. You're mostly just watching for like QC things. So like, for instance, like Saudi Arabia SmackDown couldn't have like women in it, or if there was blood, it'd have to be black and white. And like, there were just certain protocols for each country. And what
DJ, I always wondered, like the German commentators, they seem very competent, and I'm sure they are. But it's like, I don't think anybody monitors them. Nobody knows what they say, right?
Yeah, they could be completely off on whatever they're talking about. But I had a feeling that Hugo and Carlos were pretty good with it.
Yeah, I think both those guys are really good. They've certainly been around a long time.
Yeah.
The legend was that Tito didn't speak much Spanish. And Tito Santana. I've never asked Tito about it. In fact, I'd love to ask him about it. But the legend was that Tito didn't speak much Spanish and wasn't really fluent in it. And Vince had him doing commentary, and Tommy Carlucci and guys would go to Vince, go, he doesn't speak Spanish that well. Vince goes, oh, it's fine.
That's a true story. We had him here in Florida, and we got a huge Hispanic population down there. And Eddie Graham would always try to get him to speak Spanish, and he did tell all the guys, I can't do what what Eddie wants me to do, what I do, and everybody just do what you can do, and he will know the difference. And that's how Tito got by here in Florida with the Hispanic population.
I guess he just said Arriba a lot.
Yeah.
So you're watching like Russian, German, all this stuff.
Oh yeah, all day long. And so I was like, probably 8 months in, I was like, I wanted a full-time job, and I kept asking. They're like, oh, sorry, there's no positions open. So I was like, well, I'm going to go over to HR, and I'm going to find some position up. They had like a big board with like all these positions on it, and I was like, I saw a writer's assistant. I was like, I want to do that. And they're like, well, we usually hire people from Hollywood and blah blah blah, and like, you have to write a script. And I was like, I'll write a script. They're like, well, you have a month to get us a script. I said, I'll have you one tomorrow. And I wrote a script in one night, a SmackDown script, and I brought it in, and I gave it to Tommy, and I think Tommy gave it to Michael Cole, who liked it. And then I think Stephanie ended up seeing it too. And then I ended up getting an interview for a writer's assistant position, and I got it.
So are you like the dog that caught the car at this point? When you're like, you're like the writer's assistant, you're like, what do I do now?
Yeah, it's basically, Then I got to basically do whatever Michael Hayes tells me. And my first day meeting him, I was just like, oh my God, who is this guy? I'd seen him on TV and all, but I just didn't realize that the actual person was,
the legend was true, wasn't
it? Yes.
Yeah, Michael's the only person that his character was a toned down version of him. Toned down, not ramped up, toned down.
Right. So I think one of the, and like some of the phrases that were coming out of his mouth, I just couldn't believe it, but I was so happy. I was like, man, this is cool. This is awesome. And, I forgot to tell, so my first day on the job, or first day I was going to interview with Stephanie, they made me, even though I was working there and I had work to do, like I had to like cut bumpers for like velocity or something like that. And, and they made me go sit in the lobby to wait. And then all of a sudden Ted DiBiase walks in and sits down next to me. Now I'm expecting like Ted DiBiase to be like, money, 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 you know, like the big personality. He's just like, hi, how are you? I'm Ted. It's like, oh man, this is not exactly, I did not expect the $1 Million Man to be like that when I first met him. But then he interviewed before me. And then we actually, I think both started on the same day.
Was that when he was with Creative?
Yes. Yep.
I'd forgotten about that. I remember now when Ted was there. I'd forgotten that Ted was part of Creative.
I think he was absolutely
had to interview.
Yes, he had to interview.
Didn't they know who he was?
Right, exactly. That's what I couldn't believe.
So you're sitting in line waiting to interview with Ted DiBiase.
Yeah. I was like, this is incredible. This is absolutely incredible. And then he got called in before me, of course. And then I got called in after him.
Stephanie, one that interviewed you guys?
Yes, Stephanie. Yep. Yeah. But I had to have it. Before I could get to Stephanie, I had to have an interview with Brian and Michael and like the whole writers group. And they gave me like a bunch of crap because I like didn't say hi to them or anything like that. Like, because everybody at the studio was like terrified of them. So they're always told you, like, don't talk to anybody, like, don't say hello to them, like stay away from them.
That's strange, DJ. I mean, you're told, you know, you're working, don't talk to these people. I mean, a lot of people have told me that, you know, they were, if you see Vince, don't talk to him, turn the other way. Why? You know?
Why? Exactly. They're like, yeah, go the other way. Don't talk to anybody. And then I remember telling people in the department that I was moving on to the writers team. They're like, well, you'll be fired in about 3 weeks. So yeah, that's not a very wise choice. You should have stayed in your job.
So the interview obviously went well with Stephanie. And when did you know right away that you were hired? Why did she look at your script that you had written for Tommy?
Yeah. Yep. She looked at that and then asked me a bunch of questions, and she was just really nice, to be honest with you. And then she said that I had talked to the team and that they were okay with bringing me on. And I started that next day with like coffee for everybody. And, and that's pretty much what you do then.
What were the questions asked for like an interview for the creative team?
Gosh, I'm trying to remember. It was a long time ago.
That's your experience. What did you? I worked in a bar.
I was just trying not to
lie about your experience.
Yeah, I didn't lie about my experience because I at least had 8 months that I was working for Tommy already. So that was, at least I had that. And then she was like, oh, can you take good notes? I said yes, which I was terrible at doing that. But for the most part, I was just trying to keep my eyes up looking at her in the face because she had like this like nice shirt on, and I was just like, I couldn't help myself. I was like, stay calm. But yeah, it worked out. I forget, like, some of the stuff Michael asked me was just absolutely like crass stuff. It was, I can't remember. I think he might have told me to can we swear on this?
If we're talking about Michael Hayes, we can.
Yes. He might have told me to kiss his dick and make it a love story.
I was going to ask you what was the first storyline, and you just told me. You know. That didn't take care of it, right?
And he also told me way before it's fuck me, it's fuck you, and that's what he would tell me. So,
oh yeah, I've heard Michael say that a million times. Michael says some of the craziest things you've ever heard, and somehow it seems normal coming out of his head.
Yeah, here I am. I'm like 23 years old, like with this kind of like, yeah, scary guy with with long hair who's half in the bag, and I'm like, this is awesome. I love this.
You immediately go on the road, DJ, because that had to be a hell of a change too, you know, from being in state.
Oh yeah, and
were you on the corporate jet right away?
Yes, right away. And
wow.
Yeah, that was terrifying. And at the time, you had to have like so many copies that like I had like, I mean, I must have been walking around with like 100-pound bag with like every document, everything, because you never know like what Vince would ask for. Like, does he want the long-term storyline grid? Does he want a script of this show? Does he want last week's show? Like, you just never knew. So you just always had to have it. And the other thing that was tough is that you had to fax, and maybe this was like part of a test, I don't know, you had to fax Vince the show whenever it would come out. So sometimes the show would come out at 3:00 in the morning. So like, I don't think I slept at all for like my first year I was there, because I was always so nervous that I had to be awake to make sure that if anybody needed anything. It was nuts.
They call you 24/7. There's no wow when you're working in that office.
You never know. Yeah, there's really no time off or anything like that. And little did I know that then, but I mean, I was loving it. It was exciting. I couldn't believe, being on the corporate jet for the first time. It was just like, it was terrifying, but it's like so exciting at the same time.
The security guard from former cop from Florida, Jim. I think it's Jim, right?
Yeah,
Jim Kelly. Super guy. I'm just that was his last name. Not Jim Tillis. Jim Tillis was a super guy as well, but the one from Florida, just nicest guy in the world. He gets on the plane for the first time. He's the security. Hogan's on the plane. Stone Cold's on the plane. Vince is the last one on the plane. So I'm sitting there, and all he wants to do is not be noticed. He just wants to get on and be completely ignored. And so how overwhelming that corporate plane is. So when he walked in, I'd met him, a couple of times, shook his hand, said hello to him, asked him where he's from, all that stuff. So I said, there you go right there. And I told him to sit in Vince's seat. Vince gets on the plane and he sees this new guy sitting up there with Hogan and all these guys in his seat. He goes, how about we switch seats, pal? And Vince was very nice about it. To this day, he hasn't forgiven me for that. He came inside the back. He goes, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. I've got a gun. I'm going to kill you. You know what? He actually might shoot me. He really might. Right.
One of those guys that will.
That's right. And because he did have a gun.
I was fortunate enough, like for my first 3 months, that Vince had just blew out his quad, so he wasn't on the plane for the first 3 months that I was there. So I got to get to know the lay of the land before I actually had to interact with him in any way. So that was kind of a blessing in disguise for me, I think.
Were you at TV when Vince blew out his quad? Was it when he blew out his quad lifting, or when he blew out his quad in the ring?
At the Royal Rumble, yeah, at the Royal Rumble. I was doing Spanish Royal Rumble from
with Tito. Arriba.
Arriba.
So when Vince blew out his quad lifting that one Sunday morning, and we had a pay-per-view, I don't know where we were, but he realized that he tore his quad off the bone, and he realized he couldn't get down to Birmingham and have surgery that day. He had to wait till the next day. So he thought, well, why wouldn't I just fly to TV? So he flew to TV with that torn quad and worked all day. His quad was not on the bone. He said they were like, right, he was going to have surgery the next day. I thought, well, so much for me calling in sick because I'm hungover.
Right.
DJ, you're on that plane for the first time. Where did you do Raw? Do you remember where you guys went? Did Raw?
I think we went to the Quad Cities, Moline.
Wow.
Yep. And it was Moline, and I forget what the other city that we did after that was. And then I think the following week was Minneapolis, for a pay-per-view where I missed the plane flight the next day to get to Green Bay.
Why'd you do that?
Because I was drinking Jack Daniels with you.
That's awesome.
That wasn't about me. You and Bruce went out the night before, was it?
No, that wasn't that.
No, we were.
Now you mentioned when I was talking to you about this show, Minneapolis. We're going to talk about Minneapolis. What story? Because should I allow you to tell this story first?
Sure. Why not? So
was that your first? Was that one of your first TVs?
Yeah. That was like my.
Holy cow!
It was like my first pay-per-view, and Bradshaw had just finished a match with John Cena, like a no holds barred match or something like that. And I think you were like, I swear you were bleeding through your jeans and everything still at the bar with like Ron Simmons was there and a couple other people. I can't really remember, but me and this guy, Sean Conaway, who was the other writer's assistant, we went to the bar to get a drink afterwards. And I think you said, you're like, hey, you guys like to drink? And we were like, yeah, we're fresh out of college, man. Like, yeah, we can drink. And you're like, oh, you think you can, huh? And then somehow I got caught in something that I didn't mean to say, that I accidentally said. And then the next thing you know, there was a giant tray of Jack Daniel's shots. And I think we went like shot for shot. And all I know is I woke up the next morning and I was just outside of my hotel room, and I woke up and I looked at my phone. I was like, I called Sean and he was like, hello, and he was still in bed. I was like, we just missed our flight to Green Bay, man. We're so dead, man. We're gonna get fired. And then actually we got to Green Bay late. We had to walk into the meeting late. And I think you actually came into the meeting and then actually said something nice about the fact that we drank with you that night. So that kind of saved my butt a little bit.
I did. Yeah. Because I thought I could help save you. So Jerry, I'm sitting
Orlando
there, I've got
Jordan.
stitches in my head. I'm all busted open. We're sitting there doing shots, and I see DJ and Sean at the bar. They're 2 new guys, and I thought, well, I'll invite them over to drink with us. And I said, you guys want to come drink? Oh yeah, we just got out of college. We're like right in our prime. Okay, cool. I ordered like a case of beer and like 30 shots of Jack.
You did the Ric Flair night, right? Give me 100 shots of Jack, man.
That's right. DJ woke up outside of his hotel room. So I played golf the next morning. I went up there and I found out that he'd gotten in trouble. So I went in the production room to make him, try to ameliorate the problem. I figured if I can get Vince laughing, he wouldn't fire him. And it worked.
And he didn't, thank God.
That was a fun night.
Yeah. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw a waitress coming over with 2 trays of Jack Daniel's shots. That's when I knew. I was like, oh my God, this is way beyond what I've done in college.
Jerry, we were in our prime. We've been going out every night. And so the Jack Daniel's down. I said, just drink with me. And okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it started getting a little slower and slower. It was a fun night.
How did you find the talent that first month or so when you're in there? Were they pretty receptive to you? Because you're a very likable guy, and I think
no,
they weren't.
No, nobody was very receptive to me. It took a while. It took quite a while, I think. I think like the best chance I think when I connected the best with talent was I went on the European tour, and that was probably like the best thing for me, was to go on that tour and spend a long period of time like in the bus riding with everybody and talking with everybody and really getting to know everybody. I think that changed things big time for me to be able to do that.
I think that had a lot to do with, when they first started bringing in writers, when we first, were in WWE, you just had Bruce and Pat and Vince, and that was pretty much it. Right. Then you started bringing in writers, and, Brian Gewirtz was one of the first, and Ed Koski, who had been there for forever. And there was I think a hesitancy between the boys to the writers. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not sure we're going to accept these guys or not, don't know. And then when you go out with them, you realize these are just normal guys like we are. And I think that breaks down everything. So when you talk about the European tour, once the guys realize you're a good guy, there's no issues.
Yeah.
That was, there were so many guys coming in and out, DJ, at the time. We had writer's assistant. We had a new busload of them, seemed like every week at the TV.
Yeah, I think 40 people got fired, but just in the first few years I was there. So it was not a job that had long tenure for most people, and it was usually, I think, a lot of the Hollywood people they brought in just couldn't couldn't handle it or get it or understand it, to be quite honest with you.
Or stand the road pressures of traveling every week too, because that's a bitch in itself. It's just
Definitely. It was like,
road travel.
yeah, I think by the time I got to like even at like 30, I was like, oh my God, like I don't know if I can even keep doing this anymore. It's just like, it's a lot, to give, 100+ hours a week to it and never have really any time off.
During that first session that you were there, what was one of the first big angles that you can recall that you were involved in, that you were holding your breath on?
Oh gosh. I'm trying to think. I know like one of the first things I did is I actually pitched the Miz to come on SmackDown, and it took him a while to prove himself too, I think. And but like I was familiar with him from like his reality TV days and stuff like that, and I just thought it'd be cool to have like a reality kind of guy in the mix, and like that was like one of the things. But like one of the biggest lessons I learned from was like Michael Hayes would be like, well, if like stop pitching things for people that really don't matter. Until you know what the top of the card is doing, you have no business coming up with anything on the bottom of the card. So it's like, what's Bradshaw doing? What's John Cena doing? What's Triple H doing? We need to, those are the ideas you need to come in with first, and then work backwards and fill in the rest, which was a great piece of advice, because a lot of people would just die on that. Like, I got my Simon Dean pitch, and it's like, that never would get you anywhere. So it was like, come up with the ideas for the top talent, and that will probably be, a good thing for you to do. I think like one of my best ideas, I think, was like, we're trying to figure out, Edge had just won the title from John Cena, cashing the Money in the Bank. We're on a meeting with Vince, and he said, well, what would you do if you won the title and you were Edge? And I said, I'd have sex with my girlfriend in the middle of the ring with everybody to see.
It's awesome.
So that's kind of how like that live sex celebration thing happened.
Really? That's how it came about.
That's
a great story.
So how did you explain that to Stephanie and Vince?
But I was like, if I was the rated R superstar, that's what I'd want to do. I'd want to do something rated R on TV with my hot girlfriend,
And we all know Vince pretty well. When you pitch Vince an idea that you think so far out there, sometimes he just like, oh, I love that.
Yeah. It was like, I think that was like number 4 on the list of like I had put, like mentioned it to Brian. I think it was like that's like lower on the list. It was like we were reading them off. He's like, next, and then it's like, well, what if he did that? And he was like, oh, I love it. Yeah, just you never know.
In your travels with WWE, I know we went to a lot of cities, but one city stands out to me where there is Bakersfield, California. Does it?
Oh yeah, I love Bakersfield.
When you go to Bakersfield, California,
you got to sing a Buck Owens song in Bakersfield, California.
We're aware of this, John, but every one of these DJ, every writer's assistant that ever come in.
Yeah,
we went to Bakersfield, and what was the requirement?
You had to learn a Buck Owens song and then sing it in the ring for everybody, and you couldn't really mess up any of the words. You'd have to get it all right. People would be sweating.
Your song was what?
Catch a Tiger by the Tail.
Well, Jerry, tell them why. Buck Owens is from there, and they've got the museum there. They got Dwight Yoakam's motorcycle in the museum.
Bakersfield, California, Bakersfield sound, with all the
Bakersfield sound.
So all these city boys, they come through. They join the WWE. Where me, John, I'm a country boy. I love country music.
Yep.
Bakersfield, California is a shrine to that. Anderson, not John Day from Florida, but Dwight Yoakam, Merle Haggard, Buck Owens, the Crystal Palace there. So every one of these kids would come in, all right, I'd ask them, I'd give them a quiz on a town, if I knew something good about the town. All right, what do you know about Bakersfield, California? I don't know anything. What country music singer from? I don't know. Buck Owens, to make them find out. okay, Buck Owens, I want a Buck Owens song from me by 6 o'clock. When we're out there rehearsing, you're gonna have to go out and stand by the ring, or if the ring's not busy, you'll get in the ring and you got to sing a Buck Owens song there. We have several writers' assistants that came through, including John Carl, Brian Gewert, Jennifer Bloodworth. Every one of them sang their Buck Owens song.
They did. We all sang a Buck Owens song, and people would be sweating all day trying to make sure they learned all the words. Just like sitting there, somebody they put on their Walkman or whatever we had at the time, or iPhone or whatever, and just be listening to the song over and over again. So much so that they were barely getting their work done because they're just trying to learn that Buck Owens song so they could, so they wouldn't mess it up at 6 o'clock before doors open.
In the afternoon, I just hand them a mic, and guys are in there rehearsing, studying everything. All of a sudden, one of these writers' assistants starts hitting into a Buck Owens song. Everybody, what is going on with that?
Some of the most creative things in WB happened in the afternoon.
Yeah, I think I like had popped into Gorilla, and Mr. Brisco was sitting in there, and I sat down with him, and I think that's what he started asking me about Bakersfield, and he's like, "What do you know about Buck Owens?" I said, "Well, not all that much." He's like, "Well, you better pick a song and learn it because you're gonna be performing it today." I was like, "Oh, are you kidding me?" Like I thought he was kidding, and he's like, "No, I'm not kidding. You better go learn that song."
It's amazing to me that you got this multi-billion-dollar company and it would completely shut down in the middle of the afternoon to do something hokey.
100%.
and gladly. I mean, everybody would gladly shut. Vince, Kevin, everybody would like, okay.
Oh yeah, they'd record it. They'd put it up on the Tron, everything.
That's right.
And if you were good, you'd get a good response. And if you were bad, you'd get heckled a little bit.
So what is the creative process? So say Monday Night Raw is over. That's when I guess your next week starts. You get back on Tuesday. What's the creative process for creating from a blank page? I know you have certain storylines that are carrying forward a show for the next week, say SmackDown on Friday or Thursday, whatever it was, and then Monday Night Raw.
Well, the way we did it back then was that everybody would come in with your own segments every week. So you'd have to have, so there's 11 segments in Raw, at least there was at the time when it was 2 hours. You come in with your 11 segments every week, no matter what. And so basically you'd spend like the flight home, like trying to get your segments done before you got to the office right away, because you didn't really get a day off. You come back from TV and then you're back in the office again to working on the show for the next week. So that way you can be ready to pitch Vince on like Thursday. So you're basically spending all day Wednesday. Everybody's bringing in their segments to the table, and then they kind of go through and kind of pick the best ones. Sometimes those things are kind of planned out in advance. Like we would basically grid out storylines like week by week, especially like the bigger ones. But a lot of times like things change. Vince changes his mind. Something didn't necessarily work. We got a better idea that might be something completely different. And then we kind of work backwards from there.
Who put the segments together? The 11 segments. Who said these are the segments?
Everybody would do your own, and then like Brian and Michael would basically decide on what we're going to pitch to Vince, and then we would have basically like backups. So Vince would say, well, "I don't like that idea for the main event," so then we'd have like 2 or 3 backups that we'd use basically from all the ideas that everybody kind of brought to the table, just as a backup plan. And sometimes he didn't like any of the ideas, and then you just have to go back to the drawing board again.
So would you know your segment? At least it involves, say, Cena and Edge or somebody. Would you know that much, or would you create a segment completely from scratch? I mean, I'm asking because obviously you don't want a replication of segments of people writing different segments of Cena or somebody else.
Yeah. So like we have an idea. Like if we knew that like Cena and Edge are headed towards the pay-per-view, we know that they're going to have something for that segment. What it is. Everybody would kind of bring different perspective to the table about what involvement that had. And also, there'd be phone calls to the talent and stuff like that to make sure that they're on board and what ideas they like, because that obviously hold a ton of weight, especially when you're pitching it to Vince, to know that like, yeah, John likes this idea and he wants to do this, or so that would be extremely helpful to go into a situation like that. But sometimes, yeah, sometimes if none of my segments made them, I always kept some in my back pocket just to throw out in a meeting, because I knew if he didn't like something, there would be an opportunity to like maybe get one of my ideas on if I just kind of held some stuff back and kept them in my pocket and then threw them out
And
there.
people always tell people that, Vince doesn't mind you telling him you don't like something as long as you have an alternative.
Yes. Yeah. That is completely
Vince
true.
doesn't care if you say I don't like this, and if Vince says why, I'll go, well, I just don't like it. That doesn't work. But if you say, well, I don't like it because of this, I would rather do this, he'll listen to anything as long as you have an alternative.
Yep. He was always open to any ideas and outside the box ideas. Yeah, as long as you had a plan on how you're going to execute it.
But I see now why it's so hard to get storylines for so many people, because when you have so many shows a week and you got to start off with the top 3 or 4 storylines, and you're going to debate those storylines and you're going to redebate those storylines because those are the ones that are drawing all the ratings. It's tough to get to 5, 6, 7, and 8 as far as things that are important.
Yeah.
When you say you only have stuff for the top people, well, there's a reason. You're doing so many freaking shows. I see now why it's so hard to write for an entire show.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great, but like a lot of times, like some of those ideas just kind of end up getting kind of thrown to the wayside, and those, unfortunately, I feel like sometimes the undercard gets a little lost in the shuffle, rather than like everybody having a purpose sometimes. And I think that's like one of the negative things about it to me, I think, is that like I like the idea of everybody having something to do or being part of it, whether they're on the top or the bottom. But obviously you have to focus on what's drawing the money and paying everybody's salaries. So
right. Yeah, because if you get the couple 2 or 3 main event stories right, you do well. I mean, you do really well.
Yeah, and everybody still has a job, and that's a good thing. So.
You guys were so stacked with writing. I mean, how many shows were you actually writing? Were you writing a segment for our spot for every show that we produced? Was what, about 4 or 5 at that time?
Yeah, about 4 or 5 shows a week. Yeah, at the time.
And that was something just to keep up with which characters, which, and not to overlap them.
Yeah, I mean, I think at one point on Heat, like Matt Stryker fought Johnny Parisi like 100 weeks in a row because we didn't have nothing else for them to do. I mean, that was what would happen sometimes, is unfortunately, like, yeah, the guys that didn't make the cut there on Raw, they just end up fighting each other every week on Heat, the same people over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I've been in that spot before, when you're not being used and all of a sudden you're like, what am I doing? You're on Heat with who? Oh, with Billy. Okay, what are we doing?
Him last week. Well,
yeah. And they ask them what you're doing, and you realize they don't care what you do. What are we doing? One of you over? Okay, all right. Since Billy's not here, I'll take that.
So
that was how Godfather ended up happening, because me and Godfather, nobody was doing anything with me and nobody's doing anything with Godfather. And we were the popcorn match, the match right after, for those that don't know, right after intermission, to get people back from their popcorn to come sit back in their seats to get ready for the second part of the show in the main event. So me and Godfather are going out there every night and we're just beating each other up. I mean, we're trying everything. We're stiff. We're not stiff. Finally Godfather says, hey, I'm going to cut a promo. And I said, please do something. Just do anything. So that's when he got out there and said, you know what I am? I'm a pimp. And the place popped for the first time. We got a reaction. So then he started going further and further and further. And it was all because we weren't getting over in a house show. And then he started getting over like $1 million. And that's when he created the whole Godfather gimmick.
That's amazing.
Did you do a lot of writing for Godfather?
No, I just like whenever he was just like a guest star or something like that. He would always I get to do some stuff with him, and man, it was always a blast to do that.
Who was your favorite guy? Who was your favorite guy or girl to write for?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. I had a lot of fun writing for Jeff Hardy, to be honest with you. I think like a lot of stuff like that was really cool to do. that was quite a bit of fun. And I loved writing for Vicky and Edge. I thought I had so much fun writing for them when they were a team together. I just it was just fun to just be as obnoxious as humanly possible with them and just let them go out there and just get so much heat every night.
It is amazing. Now, Edge was a terrific heel, but it's amazing how much heat Vicky Guerrero got.
Oh my God.
It was unbelievable. When she just say, excuse me, over and over and over, and place they'd be about to riot. Oh, how I wish I could get heat like that.
Yeah. But I had a lot of fun writing for them because it was just fun to get to basically, just anger the hell out of everybody. So that was fun.
Edge had all the fun. He had the rated R superstar gimmick where he could do almost anything. Then he had Vicky Guerrero, who was, and of course Lita was awesome as well, but Vicky Guerrero as well. I mean, he had the best people to play off. He had just, what a run he had.
And then he had Chavo and Hawkins and Ryder just to take all the punishment for him every week. So he never got touched ever.
I sent him a picture. He was in Vikings, and I thought he did a great job. I love Vikings, so when I saw him on it, I thought, "Oh, this is great." And his last picture where he's standing on a whale in Greenland or wherever he's supposed to be. That's his last scene he did. So I sent him a picture of Tony Chimmel doing this, or the entrance, and a picture of him standing on the whale. And I said, look, after all these years, you're still working together. I sent it to Chimmel too. And I got like an expletive message back, which I can't repeat. I text Chimmel almost every day, and most of it's really, really bad stuff. I mean, like wishing he falls in a volcano, wishing he falls in a sewer and blows up, stuff like that.
Yeah, he takes so much abuse. It's amazing.
And he's just the funniest guy there is. He handles it. He handles it so well, which is why I hate him.
Did you ever write anything where Vince just looks at it and said, "This sucks. Who wrote this?" and blogs it up?
Yes. He once I wrote a Chris Jericho promo, and he told me, "Who wrote this? An 8th grader? This is garbage." He's like, "Go back to the drawing board and write this thing again." And I went back with Chris, and we went over it, and Chris is like, "I like this. I want to say this." And he's like, "Go back to him and pitch it again." And so I went and I pitched the same thing to him, and Vince was like, "All right, that's much better, much better." I think I might have changed like a few words, but Jericho's like, "No, this is exactly what I want to say." So go pitch it again. It's like, he just told me it's the worst thing I've ever done. I also ruined Raw. I ruined multiple seasons of Raw. I think that
Raw several times, I could recall.
Yeah. I ruined Raw forever for like, I think one time there was this Dr. Rios. You remember Dr. Rios?
Yeah.
So Mick Foley had gotten like beaten up, and the doctor was checking him for concussion. So Vince is like, "Go back there with Dr. Rios." It's like a 15-second scene with just like Dr. Rios like checking on Mick Foley, and so for a concussion. So Dr. Rios tells him, we go live, and it's like, "Here we go, we're going live with this shot." And Dr. Rios has like a tongue depressor and has Mick Foley stick his tongue out and looks down, and Vince calls me into the gorilla. He's like, "What the hell was that?" He's like, "He's checking him for a concussion. Why is he like looking down his throat? Like he's like, "You single-handedly have just ruined Raw." I said, he goes, I said, "He's a doctor." I said, "I've never checked anybody for a concussion." I told Dr. Rios, I said, "Check on Mick Foley for a concussion." He's like, "Damn it, you got to tell him how to be a doctor."
I used to love when Vince would go into hyperbole about, "You've ruined something. Like that is the worst thing I've ever seen." And I'm like, "Vince, Jim Herd had the tag team Ding Dong. Okay, it's not the worst thing. It's not the worst thing ever. It might be really bad, but it's not the worst thing ever."
I think everyone I've said in the Zoom call here has killed Monday Night Raw or SmackDown at one time or another.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He told me one time.
Bruce Pritchard has personally killed it for the last 10 years.
Our friend Bruce. We're the only two. We're Bruce's only two friends, DJ, in the whole world.
I was just texting with him a little while ago. I told him that I was coming on here.
I'm surprised he didn't warn you.
Yeah, Bruce has single-handedly ruined stuff many times.
Yeah, but he just always comes back for more, you know? He just keeps coming back.
Tell us, I know you were pals with Bruce. Tell us one of your Bruce stories.
Well, I mean, on a positive note, the one thing I think Bruce taught me was like when you were producing a backstage scene, like to go in there, even if you didn't have any idea what you're doing, go in there and act like you own the room and you know exactly what you're doing. He's like, because otherwise nobody's going to follow you and nobody's going to listen. So he always was like, go in there with authority, go in there with a plan. And it was probably like the best piece of advice I had ever gotten. Let's do that because, you know, I was a little shy. You're working with these larger than life talents and like, you don't really know how to behave, but he's just like, go in there and own the room and you'll get something good out of it. You know, I don't know if it'll get approved, but at least you pretend like you know what you're doing. And then eventually, you know, just watching him over time and learning from him, you know, as far as like being a producer and a director, like I learned quite a bit from him on that.
Bruce is a hell of a teacher. We rib him all the time on this show, and we enjoy ribbing him. But he is truly one hell of a teacher. You know, he takes a lot from somebody, and he really respected you and liked you, and you and Kapoor and Ed Costa and guys like that. And he shared so much knowledge. I've watched him several times.
Yeah, I mean, I also, just driving around with Bruce was great. I remember one time, I think I drove him somewhere, and he just kept hitting me on the back of the head with his ring the whole time, because he'd be like, "Who sings this song?" I mean, I pretty much got like a lesson in country music on the road with Bruce, trying to like, you know, we'd be in the middle of Texas somewhere, listening to some station. It was some song I never heard of, and he'd be like, "You never heard of this song?" And then, but eventually, I learned them all. I ended up loving it.
Bruce knows the words of every country song there was, I believe.
I swear. I feel like I had a few that we drove together a few times and just, yeah, what's this song? What's this song? What's this song? And you guys knew them all.
we had a shirt that we put out with, they said we couldn't sell it. It was I'd take a bullet for Tom, I'd put one in Bruce. And we're his only two friends in the whole world. We're his only two friends.
I mean, another funny story with Bruce is when I did do the Big Dick Johnson thing for the first time. He's the one who convinced me to go all the way. And like originally, I was just going to rip off my shirt.
Start from the beginning. How did Big Dick Johnson kind of walk us through the creative process of?
Creative process. I just knew we knew that DX was coming back and they were going to play some pranks on Mr. McMahon. So one idea was that there'd be like some male strippers, and then Brian Gorge was like, "Yeah, what if there was a chubby male stripper like DJ?" And I was like, and then I think Vince was like,
and you're like, "Brian, I'm here in the room. I can hear you."
Yeah, I'm like, and they're like, then you're kind of put on the spot, like you're going to do it. So like originally I was just going to like rip off my shirt or something like that. And then Bruce convinced me to go get like a leopard thong and have tearaway pants. and get a bottle of baby oil and spray it all over Vince's $3,000 suit. And I was dumb enough to listen to him. I did it, but I ended up, I think like the next week I was in like a match with the Sandman for some reason. It's like, and then like, next thing you know, I was like doing things I never could imagine were going to happen. But yeah, that's kind of how it came about. And then it was funny because we were like trying to come up with a name, and Dave Lagana had his brother-in-law's name was Richard Johnson. And I always used to laugh at that. I was like, his name's Dick Johnson. Ha ha ha. And then I went and pitched that name to Vince, and he's like, "No, how about Big Dick Johnson?" And that's how
It's one of the greatest characters we've ever had.
No.
It was. It's one of these characters that the boys love.
Yeah.
And you got to watch. It's so entertaining. Was Chris Farley the inspiration for that?
Oh yeah, definitely. It was like a mixture of Chris Farley and Party Boy from Jackass, I think, were like the two big inspirations for that character. I really went deep into method acting.
Yes, you did. That you became lifelong friend with our good buddy Jim Ross,
oh yes, I did become
that
lifelong
had to
friend.
be the highlight of Big Dick Johnson with Jim Ross.
And a lot of that stuff was like never even on TV or anything like that. It was just
it's one of the greatest scenes ever.
We were in Oklahoma City, if I believe, and it was JR, of course, JR's hometown, and Vince always liked playing ribs on JR in Oklahoma City, no matter what the rib was. He always.
I don't know why, Jerry. He never sold them or anything.
Never. So tell us about the setup there. Was JR aware of what you're going to do, or each step?
No, most of the time I would just surprise him. Like I think one time I came because like Oregon had just defeated Oklahoma, and I came out in Oregon as an Oregon Duck, and he popped me in the head with the microphone. I had no idea that was going to happen.
Good on that too, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He busted me open, and he always apologized afterwards. He's like, "I get it. I know it's not your fault, and you're just doing this because you're doing what you're told." I'm like, yeah, no hard feelings, JR, And but one time, I think it was New Year's Eve, and I came out as a baby New Year, and I sprayed JR in the face with 2 bottles of champagne, and then I got up on the announce desk and just started shaking my junk in his face. And he just punched me dead square in the nuts and knocked me off the announce table.
As hard as he could. He told me I hit him as hard as I could.
He hit me pretty damn hard because I was like, I swear I was gonna I was like nauseous after that hit,
The best thing was JR turns to King, because we're all watching backstage. We think it's the greatest thing that's ever happened. And JR turns to King and goes, "What's the over under? I punch him in the balls." And King says, "You won't do it." And JR turned and just rifled you in the ball sack. And you went down like a sniper and shot you. It's like, oh my God, he killed him.
Just like
killed him. You're on the table and you fell off.
He still always every time I've seen him, he still apologizes for that. He's like, that was a rough one. I didn't mean to hit you so stiff.
I didn't mean to hit you so stiff. He punched you in the balls.
Yes.
Hell, Joe, that's the only thing you could see was right in his face.
That's right. In fairness to JR, they were in his face.
Yes. Real close.
DJ, I wish you'd had a camera on the guys in the back, because we're watching it. We think, oh, this is great. He's getting.
That would have been way more entertaining.
All of a sudden, he's like, oh my God. Oh my God. He killed him. Stretcher. Go get Big Dick.
Bring out the ambulance.
So have you ever thought about doing like conventions as Big Dick, like baby oil and thong? And
no.
Oh.
I have been asked a few times, but I've never really committed to it. But like I've played other characters on like Big Brother and stuff like that. I play a grandma, I play angry guy, I play like an alien. I do all sorts of wacky stuff like that. Occasionally I make a cameo every year. I was a giant chicken last year. So there's not much that I won't do for money. I pretty much will do anything.
You're talking to JBL, who did anything, and a former stooge over there. So it's not like we're not in the exact same boat you are. I did some shit out there for oh my God.
The best was telling my mom that I was Big Dick Johnson. I told her on Christmas. She was horrified. She's like, what?
She obviously at some point saw a picture or video, right?
Well, I showed her the video on Christmas, and it had been like I'd already been doing it for about 6 months, and she had no idea. And she's like, oh my God. She's like, does the family know? I said, most of them know.
You were a college boy. Did you ever run into any of your old college mates after you'd done that Big Dick Johnson? And
Oh, all the time. What
was their reaction to you? You're crazy.
Yeah, most people say, yeah, I'm crazy. Like, I mean, no matter where I go, no matter what, as soon as you Google me, it pops up. So I always have to answer to it and tell people, it's a character.
Isn't that insane that you even have to tell people it's a character?
Yes, yeah, because people think, that people even think like, oh, I just do that all the time,
Yeah, I walk through airports all baby oiled up in the fall. That Bruce Pritchard got me. Yeah, it's just insane that you actually ever have to explain it to anybody. You're on a TV show in a thong. There's a good chance, and you're under the name Big Dick Johnson. There's a good chance it could be a work.
Yes, absolutely.
So after you left WWE, did you go directly to Lucha Underground?
No, so I went into reality TV, and I did about, I was doing like basically freelancing on all sorts of different reality shows. I did Redneck Island with Steve Austin. I actually did American Grit with John Cena, and then like Big Brother and various other shows and stuff like that. And then I got approached about Lucha Underground from, funny because I went for an interview to go work on Survivor, and the executive producer of Survivor there at the time is this guy, Matt Van Wagenen. He still is. And he's like, hey, like, we don't really have too many open positions on the show that you'd be qualified, like that you'd probably be overqualified for the positions that we have. But my brother is actually working with Mark Burnett and Robert Rodriguez right now to try to create a wrestling show, and you should go talk to them. And then I ended up going to talk to them, and that's how we started to make Lucha Underground, which was really, really fun to do.
And Chavo worked with you as well, right?
Yeah. Yep. So like Chavo was like the first person I called because I knew he was out in LA, and I thought that he could be really helpful to have around. And I always got along great with Chavo, and I just think overall he's just a good guy, and I thought that he could really help make it good. Plus we had like Conan there and stuff like that, and I didn't really trust him all that much, to be quite honest with you. And I just needed some people in my court, so that's kind of how that went down.
Did you film the entire season before you aired it? How did that work?
No. We filmed, well, we started with 10 episodes. They did an original order of 10. So we just shot 10 episodes when we really had like no clue. And then we ended up redoing all the backstage scenes to make them more like, we were just watching them back, and they were just like very similar to like WWE, but with multi cameras. So we decided, since like Robert Rodriguez is, the executive producer of these things, why don't we turn these scenes into like mini movies, basically? So that's kind of like where the film look came from, like all those scenes and stuff that we did. And we like started to like kind of embrace that kind of like, Robert Rodriguez style, Quentin Tarantino style movie, with these kind of outlandish, crazy, weird storylines and, mythology and stuff like that. So that happened. And then we ended up they ordered 29 more episodes after that. We did that whole first season. Then we went right into season 2, which we did 30. And then they basically all rolled into each other. And then, we ended in season 4. They was originally supposed to do 7, but they cut it short. But we did 147 episodes, and it was a lot of fun.
How did it work out if you don't have a character that's not working? Like you were in WWE, and you understand, real well. You know every week if a character is working or not. And I mean, sometimes Vince will pull a character during the show, much less the next week. But if you're doing 29 episodes and you figure out by episode 12 that a character is not working, what do you do?
Then we just have to rewrite, but you're really only testing it in front of whatever that live audience that you have there. So there's only about 500 people there that you're using to judge if this character is working or not. I mean, sometimes if we had characters that come out and like we would just cut that scene, and then a few weeks later we just shoot all those matches and storylines and redo them, and then put them back in. Like, for instance, like Paul London did this character for us and just really was not working at all, and then we changed it and then put him, basically recorded stuff afterwards and just put those pieces back into the shows earlier with kind of this different with a different character that was working. So there was a lot of that sometimes where we have to come, and a lot of times we just rolled the dice and hoped to God that people would like it. I mean, we really didn't have too much of a chance to change things, but if we could, we would at the last second here and there, especially like injuries and things like that happened. Like there was like literally scrambling, rewriting the show as it happens, and then just having to adjust everything based on that. Like some things end up on the cutting room floor, and we just have to go back and re-record different parts. So that was hard too for the audience, because sometimes I think they're a little confused as to what was happening and why things were happening, because something may or may not have been working.
Right. Yeah, I've just always wondered that about episodic television shows. You know, when you film an entire season, and you know, if a character doesn't work, you just seem pigeonholed into, you're pretty much you're stuck. I mean, there's not much you can do. You know, it's just you know, because wrestling is so, live wrestling, you know, episodic is so different, because you know every week, you know every week if something's working, then you go to the live event, which is so important for television, because you can test out certain things to see if the TV worked or not, you know, and you pretty much know right away if it did or didn't. It just seems like it's a much tougher gig to try to write 30 episodes straight than it is to write one, see what works, and write one again the next week.
Especially, and you don't know, and then we were never getting any actual reaction to any of the backstage things, because those were all shot separately. So you didn't know if something like that you were doing backstage or storylines, you know, we killed people on the show. Like if that stuff was even going to work at all. Like I remember we killed the first person on the show, and we were like, oh my God, this could go one or two ways. People are going to really hate it, and they're going to think it's cool. So luckily, I think people liked that part. So it was cool.
You know, I always wondered why we couldn't do stuff like that in wrestling, not necessarily kill people, but though there were a few, I wouldn't mind. But it's always like, you know, you do stuff in television, you go, okay, you can kill people, you can do all this crazy stuff, but in wrestling, oh my goodness, that's not politically correct. You got to cut that out. Well, you got to be kidding. Right. I mean, it's just a different standard for wrestling than it is for other television shows.
Hell, sure. John, we killed Vince McMahon on TV.
Oh, that's right. We did. Yeah, that's right. We did. And Big Show got thrown off a building one time too, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's still upset that he lived. I'm just kidding. I love Show. You know, the only thing that makes me mad is he wasn't here to hear me say that.
Yeah. DJ, when we were talking about you coming on there, we're talking about different stories and everything. I mentioned Eric Bischoff's name, and you laughed. He said, "I got really funny stories."
Oh, I'll never forget. So I was with Hunter and Sean, and Eric Bischoff was like the referee, and they bring me out, and the plan was that DX was going to put his face in my butt, basically.
Of course they were.
So before the thing happened, I went up to Eric and I'm like, Mr. Bischoff, like, you know, real excited to be doing this thing. And he's like, well, I'm not too excited about it. I said, but I promise. I said, I'm going to clean really good down there before we do that. And he's like, oh yeah, that really makes me feel better. That really makes me feel better. So I always laugh about that because I was just honestly trying to be nice, but I guess I didn't really think about the fact that he was the one who's going to have his face shoved in my butt, you know, like.
So whenever you see like an old WCW deal where he's like in the Attitude Era, do you ever like tell your buddies, he was up my butt one time?
Oh yeah, all the time. I went to go interview for a few jobs for him and for his company when he was doing some Discovery Channel stuff, and I feel like I never got the job always just because he was he had to have his face put in my butt.
He saw a part of you that nobody should see.
Yep.
Did you all up real good, DJ?
I did. Yep, I was extra lubed up out there that day.
Only in this business. It's the greatest thing ever.
Well, John, I think I've brought up all of our friends, Eric, JR, and Bruce. We don't have many more friends that we can kind of rib on or that we know did something to.
DJ, what are you doing now? What are you still gonna do anything in wrestling going forward? Do you ever want to do more stuff in wrestling?
I mean, yeah, actually, it's funny. I've been talking to some people about potentially doing some stuff. It really just depends, I think, on what's happening. I'm still making reality shows. I'm doing some production work for Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk, and they just put on some big live events and stuff like that. So I'm helping them with that portion of thing, and it's been wonderful. I'm just kind of enjoying my life. I moved to Arizona. Just kind of slowing down a little bit, because I pushed the pedal to the metal quite a bit. And it's just been nice to kind of do things that I want to do now, and as opposed to just work for the sake of working,
Yeah, it's such a. I don't think people understand the gig at WWE. I mean, it is the treadmill that you're on, and it's.
And I went back for 8 months, and it was like so overwhelming to me. And then it just was not a good fit for me again. I thought maybe I could be, but it was nice because at first I was just doing like some freelance shots. I would only have to go to SmackDown, just the TV, like produce like Roman Reigns stuff or like King Corbin stuff or whatever, and then I'd be on a plane out of there, and I wouldn't have to do anything the whole week, and I could just fly back and do that. And I liked that portion of it. But once they had me start to do more of the stuff and be there and wait in meetings and be waiting until 3 o'clock in the morning to meet with Vince or something like that, I was like, this is not it. I don't want to do this.
How long was your first run there, DJ?
7 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I think 7 years too. Like you said. There's no part-time. There's no easing into WWE. When you sign on that dotted line, you're signing for 24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah. When Bruce went back, he called me, and I was really excited that he'd got back. As much as we kid Bruce, I love Bruce, and he's very talented, and he gets along with Vince very well. They're both very intelligent, creative guys. And I told Bruce, I said, you're going to be living in Connecticut soon. And he goes, no, I'll never move back to Connecticut. You've heard him say that, hadn't you, Jerry? I'll never move back to Connecticut.
It's out of my house.
He's in Connecticut.
He's in Connecticut. He bought a nice house in Connecticut.
That's right.
Yeah, bets how long that would be before he moved up there, and it was quicker than both of us realized.
That's right.
I couldn't believe it. I even would say to him, like, you're crazy. Why are you doing this?
Bruce, you already know, man. But John said it, man, he gets along so well with Vince. He probably
100%.
Other than Pat Patterson that gets along better than anybody I've ever seen.
Yep.
Yeah, and he can take the workload. He doesn't. They're a good team.
That's the thing, Bruce is not a lazy guy. I mean,
no.
When Bruce is on your side, you're going to get things done whether you want to or not.
Jerry, about the only time that Bruce has a chance to call is when he's like in a car service going from home to the office. Yeah. So he's got like 15 minutes, and you go, hey, what are you doing? And he doesn't. He just wants to call it, which I'm glad he does.
Then I got to go. Vince is calling.
Yeah, that's right.
There's 3 minutes of quietness, and all of a sudden I got to go. Vince is calling. He is.
DJ, he was sick one time, and several months ago, they set up a monitor by his bed. So that
he was dying, man, and they set up a damn monitor by his bed so he could so he could be at the TV.
That's right.
My gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
well, DJ,
you're just enjoying yourself now out in Arizona, and
I am. I got my Arizona Cardinals here. I'm a big fan, so I'm gonna get to go to all the games this year. I'm super excited about that.
back this year. You're gonna have that Okie again.
Yeah, for sure. Kyler, he'll be back. But it's funny because I think after like WrestleMania 26, I was like formulating in my head. I was like, at the time, I think I told Ed Kosk, I was like, you know what? After the show's over, I'm just going to walk out and I'm just going to stay here. And I never had that opportunity to do it, but now I finally did. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to be happy and move out there. It's nice. It's like 115 degrees today, but it's.
The great thing about it, DJ, is we all got to work with a lot of wonderful people. You know, John and I were talent in our office, but you know, the group that the writers that you guys had were classic guys. You know, Dave Lagana, yourself, you know, Dave Kapoor, you know, Ed Koski, and just Bruce and all the other guys, Brian Gewirtz and all those guys. I mean, you guys made it fun to work with, and as you experience it, it's very difficult on both sides when you get a new writer in. Well, because you know we're also skeptics about our business. Is this guy take our business serious? And you guys came in with that frame of mind. You respected the business, and that's the reason you made it 7 years.
Yeah, but also, I mean, you guys were very open to being very kind to us too. You know, like especially you know, you Mr. Brisco and you Bradshaw, like you guys were very kind to us, like took us out, even like I used to just love to come sit in Gorilla and just talk to you, Mr. Brisco, every day. Just, even if it was just to complain for about 2 seconds, you know, just to go in there and hide real quick and be like, I can't take this shit.
Priest in there, confessional there.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what it was.
That's the first time Jerry's ever been compared to a priest.
And the last time too.
just go see Father Brisco just to vent real quick, because man, there would be days of like, man, I can't take this anymore.
You're one guy that never hit your time too.
Never. No, never. You would always get on me. If I did though, I would make sure to make a point of it that I hit my times, but I rarely ever did.
Well, DJ, man, John and I just thrilled to death that you took the time today, you know, to come on here. We just like to get on and just have a conversation like we did. We're just telling stories and get a laugh for ourselves, if nothing else.
Yeah. Well, you know, I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on. It's been so great to talk to you guys again, and you know, I love that you welcomed me on here, and I love to watch this show too. It's hilarious. It always pops up on my LinkedIn.
It's great to see you. We had so much fun. You're always so much fun to be around. I really did love the Big Dick Johnson's character, but I love Chris DeJoseph too. We had a lot of fun, and it's great to see you. And it's one thing Jerry and I love about the show is catching up with really good friends, and it's like no time has elapsed. You know, you just have
sure. Hey, I have one question for you. Is Brian Gewirtz still got you paying for those Mets tickets?
Oh my goodness, yes, he does. Yeah. Who do you think paid for freaking Cohn's a $290 million payroll tax? It was me. Yeah, and the seats were actually above the LaGuardia glide plan coming in. Mr. Met looked like a normal sized baseball from the seats that we were in. We needed a Sherpa to get to our seats. They were so far up. The game would actually end like an hour before we would see it where we were, because we were so far away. And the Mets lost the playoffs the last game of the year. Both seasons we had season tickets.
Of course they lost.
We found out about it a month later because that's where we got news for our seats were so far back.
That's hilarious.
I used to take pictures from a satellite of Shea Stadium, and I'd send it to Brian and go, here's a picture from our seats. And he always, we had great seats. They were low seats. They were.
That's hilarious.
Absolutely. Thank you, DJ.
Well, thanks again.